Here is what we think we know. Terrorists have control of Iraq's largest oil refinery, but Iraq's government says that that's not the case. So maybe that is not what we know. Oil watcher Jeff Siegel, that is a big problem, right? I mean, not knowing for sure who's in control of what, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing the market hates more than uncertainty. And as you said, I mean, we have the Iraqi officials saying, okay, don't worry, the terrorists don't have it, we have control. We have pictures of the terrorists out there putting the flags up, saying they have control. No one knows. It's that level of uncertainty that really spooks the market.
And compounding that uncertainty is if we can't get that straight, obviously it says something about the volatile government itself of Iraq right now and its uncertain future, which just adds to that uncertainty and that vacuum that Wall Street abhors, including oil traders, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, we're talking about 3 million barrels a day. This is not an insignificant amount of oil that comes from Iraq. You know, at this point, all we know is you can have a slight terrorist attack. You know, they could attack a refinery. They could sabotage an oil pipeline. Just barely. It doesn't even have to be that big of a firefight or anything. But what happens is just that the fact that what you said, no one really knows what happens. We don't have quality intelligence coming out of there. We don't know what's going on. And the bottom line is there's so much oil at risk there. We don't know what's going to happen if ISIS gets down south. If they go down south, it's a curtain call. $130 oil in 2 days, no problem. But we don't know if that's going to happen because we don't have quality intelligence coming through.
That's a very good insight. And you know, these days, I'm not taking sides here, but when it comes to who I believe more on their claims, I would have to go with the insurgents because I remember was the government said the insurgents do not have control at Tikrit. And then the insurgents start taking pictures of themselves at some Tikrit landmarks. I said, well, unless they Photoshop this, they're clearly there. So where do you think this goes?
So you're telling me you don't trust the government?
Yeah, well, I think that's what I'm saying here. If that's the case, and the oil markets similarly get a little anxious about the reliability of information coming out of Iraq, then oil prices rise.
Yeah, and listen, don't forget, this is one area. We still have Libya going on. We have Syria.
Right.
Venezuela's a mess. We don't know what Iran's going to do. I mean, this is really a huge powder keg, but no one knows who's going to light the match, when it's going to happen. So obviously, I mean, you know, I hope you own some oil right now. I hope you own some oil stocks.
Well, I tell you, the way it's going, it's just it is poised. We'll see. Jeff, always great. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, to Jeff's point, AAA is already warning that the crisis in Iraq could keep gas prices high pretty much all summer, no matter what happens. Not exactly the news drivers want to hear. David Lee Miller's in New York City, where gas prices are already averaging $3.80 a gallon. David Lee.
Neil, according to AAA, they actually expected gasoline prices to drop about 15 cents a gallon this summer. That forecast is now out the window because of the violence that has erupted in Iraq. Instead of prices dropping, we expect to see an increase in gasoline prices. The average price now in the United States for a gallon of gasoline is $3.68, and that is the highest it has been since 2008. And remember, Neil, that is an average. It could be considerably higher depending where you live. In California, for example, folks there are paying over $4 a gallon. And despite concern over Iraq, the U.S., interestingly, uses only a negligible amount of Iraqi oil. But Iraq is the #2 oil producer in the OPEC oil cartel, and that is a part of the problem.
We always have to keep in mind that oil is sold on a global market. So if oil is unable to get from Iraq to places like Europe or Asia, those markets have to find oil from other places. And that has a major ripple effect that eventually reaches all the way to U.S. consumers.
And most of Iraq's oil-producing fields are in the southern part of the country, and that's significant because that region, at least as of now, has not come under attack by anti-government forces. But if that should change, we can expect to see oil prices and therefore gasoline prices dramatically increase. According to one expert, any action taken by the U.S. to stop the rebel advance could calm world oil markets.
The U.S. showed clearly that they weren't going to allow the insurgency to move south and affect Baghdad and the oil fields in the southern part of Iraq. That would have a big impact. I mean, I do think global oil traders, investors believe that that's the case. But if there was a clear signal that that was in fact the case, I think that would settle markets and go a long way to keeping a lid on any increase in gasoline prices.
What seems to be increasing oil and gasoline prices more than anything else, Neil, it all comes down to one word, and that word is simply fear. As long as there's uncertainty about the violence in Iraq, we can expect to see the concern that oil prices and gasoline prices could increase, not just throughout the summer, but much beyond. Here at this gas station, by the way, Neil, the price in Midtown Manhattan, $4.19 a gallon. Neil?
Wow. David Lee Miller, thank you very, very much. All right, so here's what we're presented with. You got Iraq, a total mess right now, right? You got oil prices that could be gushing, gas prices that soon could be surging even more than they have, and now Washington, D.C. looking at doubling the gas tax. Barney Keller says bad timing. He's with the Club for Growth. They're arguing that this is the best way, and a couple of Republicans are on board, to address our infrastructure needs. What do you think of that?
Neil, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I guess, they've bailed out the Highway Trust Fund to the tune of $41 billion half a dozen times over the past 10 years. So I guess they decided that they were done bailing it out, and they decided that tax increases were a good idea. I don't think there's any good timing to raise taxes on Americans, particularly the gas tax, which, as you know, Neil, is a really regressive tax. People who are driving to work, just regular Joes, they pay that tax the same as people who are driving their Mercedes to work. So
well, you know what,
it's
their
really
argument for it, and I always find this interesting, says, well, we haven't touched it in close to 20 years, so we're due. My argument is, even if you're open to the goal of the money raised here to go to infrastructure, you have to ask yourself, well, what about the $120 billion plus we provide each year through gas taxes, tolls, fees, surtaxes, other things that are supposedly going to fixing our roads and bridges? And it's not, clearly. That's very clear. So why compound the sin?
Well, it's really interesting because, they call this political courage to throw more money into a black hole, and you hit the nail on the head. We do spend a ton of money on infrastructure. It's the way that we do it that's broken. The system that we have right now is Washington takes money from a state like Tennessee, brings it up to Washington, and then sends it back to Tennessee. Why shouldn't Tennessee just be in charge of its own infrastructure projects? What we've advocated for, and Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Tom Graves of Georgia have a bill to do, is to devolve the gas tax from the federal level to the states. Because we believe at local control, there'll be more efficiency, more accountability, and taxpayers win, roads still get built.
Well,
the
not
argument
necessarily.
that
you might just have more localized thieves there, but I do see the wisdom of that.
Yeah.
What I wonder about, though, is we have not adequately accounted for all the money we're spending right now. And I know there is this clarion push, spend more money on fixing roads and bridges. I could well understand that we need to do that. But I'm just not sure that throwing more money at it's going to do it, because if Washington is controlling that money and just parceling it out, there is no way to tell it's going to go to a lockbox for just bridges and all the like. So there's got to be a better solution.
Right, and again, I think that devolving the gas tax to the states would be a much better solution than the current one. Each state could set their own gas tax and fund their own infrastructure projects.
But doesn't that really require them to do just what they say they're going to do? Just for that, just for roads and bridges.
Well, it's far better than the current system we have, where we just send the money up to the federal government. This is going to be a real test for the Republican leadership, I got to tell you. One of Kevin McCarthy's first jobs is going to be to decide how to handle the bankruptcy of the Highway Trust Fund that's going to occur in August. And I think groups like us and the American people are going to be looking to hold them accountable. No more bailouts, no more tax increases. Let's do some real reform that ends this broken system.
Yeah.
I think local control is a far better idea than what we have now.
Well, it's better than what we have now, but thank you very, very much for Barney Keller. The fact of the matter is, folks, as Barney pointed out here, it is not brave to throw more money at a problem. It is very brave to say, hey, wait a minute, that is the problem.